I know that Kevin Cooney is good at this kind of stuff. He can settle me down sometimes. Sometimes he agrees with me. Other times not so much. But I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun with just an awful lost weekend, Kevin. But I don't know that it even matters. I mean, the whole league's so bad. You lose 2 or 3 to the White Sox. Yeah, you could have. This team feels like Chip Kelly's last year. The Eagles would lose, and then every other team around them would lose. So they were kind of in it all the way until the Redskins finally put them out of their misery on that Saturday night. This team has that feeling. Like it's not gonna. They're going to be in this thing. It seems like for the long haul. But I don't think there's anything that allows me to liberate myself and buy completely in.
So you want me to be the voice of calm and reassurance, huh? That's not a role I'm used to.
No, honestly, I felt like if you were going to agree with me, I felt better. That maybe, like, hey, maybe I flew off. Like the whole, I get it, it's a small scale. But the Franco thing, to me, Rodriguez offers Zippo. And 3 times this weekend, or twice at least, he comes up in a situation where I'm not telling you Franco's Mike Schmidt, but I'd much rather have him up at the bat in a situation to get a ball in the air than Rodriguez, who popped up, struck out looking, and hit into a double play. And if you're telling me his versatility, can you give me any scenario where you see Sean Rodriguez getting into the field in any scenario? He is a right-handed bat off the bench. That is essentially what he is. They've got, with Kingery, you've already got a built-in versatility. You don't need the guy on the bench to have versatility. You've already got that guy.
They have a ton of guys with versatility that they didn't need to add another one. In a sense where you can play Franco at first as well. If you want to really get versatility going, he can play first base if you ever need to pull Hoskins, but that's a whole different story. The idea that anybody can look at that roster and determine in that situation in the game yesterday that Sean Rodriguez is somehow a better option coming to the plate than Maikel Franco with the go-ahead runs, in plate to maybe cap a comeback at, back from 5-2. Or from 5-0 to 5-2 already. It's ridiculous. They have had, my opinion, they have had something against Maikel Franco here for a couple of years. They've tried to replace him. They've done everything. And the one guy on this team, Mike, that has been punished consistently for slumps, for the one time of somebody getting benched for lack of hustle on this team, and now the one guy sent down on this team is Maikel Franco. Not Gene Segura, not Cesar Hernandez, not Odubel Herrera, anything. All these guys have had second chances that kept in the lineup. Franco's been the one guy that's been pretty clear they have wanted to replace, they did not believe in, and for them to choose Sean Rodriguez over him baffles me. Just absolutely baffles me at the end of a baffling weekend.
I'm right there with you. And again, I don't mind if you say, look, Franco, you're going to the bench, Kingery's taking over at third. But for Gabe Kapler to say Rodriguez's versatility is the reason why he's here and Franco's going, look, I've tried, Kevin, to come up with a way that I can get Rodriguez. If you start Kingery, you're not double switching out Segura. You're not double switching out Harper. You're not double switching out Hoskins. So the only spot you would need Rodriguez is to play third base, left field, or center field. Kingery can play all of those. So if you ever needed a bat, you can hit Franco, play him at third, and move Kingery someplace else. You have Brad Miller who plays third. He can play the outfield. There is no scenario that I could come up with that Rodriguez versatility comes into play unless you're going into the 15th inning, and they screwed that up too.
And, of course, they could always put Velasquez in left field, apparently, according to this manager. So, I mean, look, I'm making fun of it, but you're right. I mean, you're taking somebody who has 20 home run potential. And is he disappointing? Yeah. If you're interested in upgrading the offseason third base, be my guest. And I get all of that. But the idea that there's somebody better on this roster right now than Maikel Franco, and his name is Sean Rodriguez, or even Brad Miller, is baffling to me.
Yeah. And the other night, I mean, so the Pivetta situation comes in. It seemed that Pivetta was going to close that game, and he hits Rodriguez for Pivetta. So he essentially thought that the potential of Rodriguez getting a hit with a 3-2 lead was a better option than sticking with Pivetta with a 3-2 lead when he already knows his bullpen is short. That's where I'm questioning. Look, I'm not the biggest Kapler hater or lover in the world. I feel like he's very flawed. They've got more options than just Kapler's managing. But that's a game the other night that his decision-making has me baffled. Why is Eflin hitting in that situation if you tell me his triceps hurt?
Well, and why did you double switch to put Pivetta in a spot that you want him to pitch 2 innings, and then you pull him just because there's one out? You know, I hate saying it. It's more important to have the better pitcher on the mound at that point, okay?
Yes.
So then put Pivetta in the game, and then let Pivetta just go up there, stand, take 3 pitches. We've seen that with closers before who have been forced to 4 or 5 out saves. We've seen that before, so why not just let it go where they find a way of letting Pivetta go in out for the night? And you want to talk about Eflin. The Eflin thing doesn't make sense to me. I didn't get what they were doing, but here's the other part of this. If you know you're 2 men short, if you know you don't have Suarez, and you know that Neris is down on a suspension, why are you letting Vince Velasquez throw a side session? Why not keep that on him in case you need it later in the game? That's a common practice to have a starting pitcher. I mean, why not have Velasquez available in case you need him in a game like that? It's just, and if worse comes to worse, and he doesn't need to be used that game, have him stay a little later and throw him aside later that night. That's all you need. But this team right now is being run almost on the seat of the pants, and which is strange for a team that's relying on analytics so much.
Right. Just to be clear, so the listeners have an idea of what you're talking about, Kevin. Velasquez threw a bullpen before the game. Yeah. If they would have just said, hey, hold off on that, we might need you in this game because we're short. Instead, they said, nah, go ahead and throw that before the game, and then they stuck him out in left field anyway.
Yeah, and then he has to throw, 194 feet at 95 miles an hour. Try telling me that's not an injury risk either. You know, they were worried about Eflin and his tricep, but had no trouble sending Velasquez out there to throw 194 feet cold, after he threw a side session, a bullpen session. Makes no sense. Right.
So what's the biggest concern here now today? Is it Gabe Kapler? Is it Gabe Kapler and Klentak and the front office and how their strategies on how they're managing and not managing these personnel decisions? Like, because just listening to you guys talk this out, it's just you shake your head because you say to yourself, there's really no green light at the end of this tunnel here because it seems like Gabe Kapler has the backing with all of these decisions by Klentak and the rest of the front office. So now what?
Yeah, and I think that's the problem here. You can't really put your finger on what the major problem that has to be corrected is. Is it the manager? Is it the general manager? Is it the lack of progress by anybody on this roster? It's almost all goes together. And they're going to play this out. And I know this is not exactly a popular opinion, but you can make the argument that the worst thing that can happen to this franchise is making the wild card game and ending up losing. Because I think it may fool them into thinking that everything's fine, and it's not. Their starting rotation's a mess. Their lineup is underachieving. There's nobody that's progressing here. The manager doesn't seem to connect, and the general manager can't seem to develop. That's a bad mix. And that all also boils down to you look at Andy McPhail. I mean, Andy is kind of an absentee presence at this point. And you wonder, where are they going as an organization when you compare it to the Braves, when you compare it to the Nationals? Heck, compare it to the Mets at this point. It's fair to wonder if the Mets are going to pass this team in the next 3 weeks.
Oh, there's no doubt that, if you just look at their rosters, the Mets have pitching. They've got younger players that you feel better about. The Phillies are kind of a team that's it feels like they're stuck in neutral here, and they're with some of these other teams, but these teams are being led by 19 and 20-year-old kids. The Phillies don't have that.
And you used the Chip Kelly analogy before, okay? To me, Mike, this is feeling like the end of Chip's time because they're not awful. And, even Chip's last year, Eagles were not awful, okay? They were not 4 wins, 3 wins, like it was kind of at the end of the Andy Reid tenure. They were good enough to be in the mix, but you're right. They're also not good enough that you have any belief that you think that they can do something long-term with this management structure. And I really believe that's where this all starts, that there is a lack of trust in what they're doing.
Yeah, and, it's like we opened up the show by saying, look, they lose 2 out of 3 of the White Sox, but they're still in the wild card, lead right now. But
that's fool's gold. That's really fool's gold.
And they're having this conversation, Kevin, in Milwaukee and Chicago and St. Louis and Arizona. And they're all teams that stink, that are all just, no matter what happens, you lose 2 out of 3. That team across Washington's going to lose 2 out of 3. You might win 3 straight, and it's going to be like this the whole way. These are all just flawed, bad teams, and you hope that the organization understands that.
There's no accomplishment for this team to make the playoffs. It's just a product of what's around them.
And I think the one argument that, first of all, at this rate, Andrew McCutchen should get MVP votes because it's pretty clear that since he's left, something's gone wrong here. There's not the same fire with this team. I looked it up. If up until the home run yesterday by Dickerson in the Nuts, they were on track for their 12th game of 3 runs or less in 21 since the All-Star break and 26 of the last 54. Okay? That tells you that there is a major problem with your offensive structure. This isn't a 1 or 2 week hiccup. This is a systematic problem that's going back to May 31st. Okay? That's part one. Part two, look at the other teams in baseball. Look at the Yankees, and obviously I get they're dealing with a different pool. Look at the Nationals. Look at the Braves. Everybody's had their share of injury here. So this idea that we're beat up, we had all these bullpen injuries and everything, nonsense. To be honest, the Nationals are still in the wild card race, even though they haven't had Scherzer since before the All-Star break. You look at what the Nationals have had to fight through with Zimmerman and all that. There's nobody on the Phillies that compares to what they've lost this year, and they're hanging around. You give them more of a pass than you do the Phillies at this point.
Kevin, you make a joke saying McCutchen should be in MVP talk considerations, and I've been on record for saying ever since he went down, this team has not been the same. But we've been looking at Gabe Kapler. We've been looking at the front office decisions that have and have not been made. Can we look at the players in the clubhouse? Because you bring up a good point with McCutchen. Who the heck's the leader of this team now? Where are the players holding a players-only meeting, or Bryce getting fiery within the organization? Maybe that's happened and we don't know about it, but it seems like there's no backbone on the players of this team.
See, it's tough because I don't know if there's that personality mix in that clubhouse, okay? The strange part is one of the guys who was kind of a central figure for a lot of guys in that clubhouse was Franco. Franco kept guys loose. Franco was really well liked. And there was a legitimate concern when we were talking to Gabe Kapler yesterday, like, how do you handle the impact on the clubhouse? He goes, we have strong leaders and everything. Well, how do you see a strong leader? Who's the strong leader in that clubhouse right now? I don't see one, and I think that's a real problem. And, yes, you can point to Bryce Harper. You can't make guys who don't have that personality and who are in their first year leaders. They have to develop it and kind of feel it themselves. Andrew McCutchen's at a different point in his career than what Bryce Harper is. But you would figure Rhys Hoskins was ready to take that mantle. He hasn't really done that. JT Realmuto hasn't done that. Again, first year, I get it. But at some point here, maybe all the moves that they made in the offseason, they just haven't quite developed that chemistry and developed that leader yet. And now we're in August, and it's too late. You almost think it's too late for it to emerge for this year.
I think, Kevin, all you need to say is when Vargas and Smiley are the two guys you have some of the most confidence in when they toe the rubber, that's a problem.
Well, besides Nola, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Nola, yeah.
Class. But, yeah, and this points to the general manager. The decision to go with the 3 main starters that they did, or the 3 back-end starters that they did, Pivetta, Eflin, and Velasquez to begin the season, and just expect that it would miraculously end up with them maturing all at the same time and everything. is the fatal mistake for this team. Because no matter what happens from here on in, you're going to be scrambling for 3, maybe 4 starting pitchers in the offseason. That's going to be a lot for this organization to fill, in addition to what we believe they're going to have to fill at third base. And I know Alec Bohm is obviously the sentimental choice around here that will go to third base next season. There's no guarantee a rookie on a team that is going to profess itself as a potential contender. I'm not sure that's necessarily the wisest move either if he has no major league experience. So they have a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions about the GM. There's a lot of questions about the team president. And there's certainly a lot of questions about the manager, who nobody in my mind has improved in his tenure. And after 2 years, that's an alarm bell statement.
Kevin Cooney, Philly Voice, Forbes, MLB. You can, of course, check him out at Kevin Cooney on Twitter for more of his musings and thoughts on this team, which is right at the top of the wild card standings, fool's gold or not. They're going to play Arizona tonight for 3 with a chance to jump ahead in those wild card standings, and he was kind enough to join us here. Yeah, go ahead, Kev.
And Mike, this road trip, they are awful historically on the West Coast. This road trip could be the one that sinks them.
Well, it starts tonight. Arizona 56-56, right at 500. Phillies 58-53. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it, pal.
No problem. Thanks, Mike.